You step up to the line of scrimmage. You get under the center. You survey the defense, and you yell out loudly, 225, 225, hut, hut, hut. On the second hut, the ball is snapped into your hands. The offensive line begins to pass block, and the receivers run their routes. You drop back 3 to 5 steps. You survey the field. You eye your receivers to try to spot the open man. You're running with your eyes and your mind. Your primary target is now 10 yards down the field. You look for the tight end, outside receivers, and even your running back. Who's open? Meanwhile, the defense has disguised a blitz, and they're bearing down on you with 4 300-pound tackles and a 210-pound safety sprinting in your direction. The defensive end, he's in your blind spot. He has beaten his blocker and is bearing down on you from behind. You have 2 seconds from the snap of the ball to get crushed by the blitz. What do? Beat the ball for a sack, throw it away, run out of the pocket to buy time. Suddenly, the audience says, "Oh, thank God, you completed the pass to open man for a first down." What is the mindset that helps one succeed in the most challenging of circumstances? And how does it apply to life off of the football field? Some will tell you to follow your dreams, shoot for the stars, think big. But not tonight's guest. He will tell you time and time again, aim small, miss small. And our guest this evening, his name is Scott Brunner. In case you don't know who he is, in the 1980s, if you watched the New York Giants, St. Louis Cardinals, or even the Denver Broncos, you would have seen him do what I just explained. Welcome to A Climb to the Top, Stories of Transformation on Talk Radio 77 WABC. I'm Chuck Garcia, and my guest is Scott Brunner. Scott, welcome to A Climb to the Top.
Hey, Chuck. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You're quite welcome. As I was describing this scene, is that what it felt like? Because I have no idea.
Well, it's very interesting because people always ask me that, how do you read coverages? How do you make decisions in the middle of plays? And the easiest way I can describe it to somebody, especially people who have gone through school or an academic situation, is reading coverages is like taking a multiple choice test. Now you go up and you read the question and you see all the answers and you know that one of the answers is right. You have to know which answer is right in order to be successful? No. If you identify the wrong answers, you can raise your probability of having a successful outcome by eliminating the wrong answers. And that's really what happens when you're reading coverages in the NFL. You're stepping under center, you're looking out at the defense, you see a couple of subtle keys that you've studied during the week, and on that play that 3 of the receivers that are running down the field are not going to be in the discussion. And
A, B, and C, not an option.
Exactly. To C and D are the answers, and A, B, and E are not the answers. And it makes it a little easier, and that's how quarterbacks ultimately make their decisions in such a high pressure, short amount of time.
And interestingly enough, for you, football is in your DNA. Is that something that you grew up with? Describe the relationship with your dad, how you came to this game before we change course.
Well, it's interesting. It's like any kid growing up in a household. If you're the son of a doctor, you're probably going to have some aptitude for medicine. If you're the son of anything, of a radio show host or a public speaker, you're going to have some skill sets that you acquire just from being in that environment. And that's what happened to me in football. My dad was a coached in the high school, college, and ultimately coached in the pro level. And as a result of that, I got exposed to a lot of different philosophies, different people, that I met through him, and kind of absorbed all that information over the course of my lifetime.
And while you were at the University of Delaware playing in what I remember was Division II, were you setting your sight on joining the pro ranks?
Well, not really, not at that time. I was I was a backup most of my career in college. I didn't start until my senior year, and there was another fellow who was there, and he happened to be drafted into the NFL as well. So, we were NFL talented at the quarterback position at Delaware at the time. In fact, I think Delaware put more quarterbacks in the NFL than Penn State or some of the big schools at that time, just with me and the other fellow. So, I wasn't thinking about the NFL. I was just thinking about playing Saturday at Delaware and doing my best and let the chips fall where they may.
And yet, before you knew it, you were leading the Giants into the playoffs. How did that feel a couple years after college?
It was pretty exciting, and I think some of the experiences I had at Delaware, helped prepare me for that. We were a program that was, even though we were a small college program, we were a program that had a lot of success. So I had a great attitude. I understood the formula of success and what it took to be successful, and I found that I could transfer those traits and those skill sets from Delaware to the NFL level, and that allowed me to be prepared when I got the opportunity with the Giants to ultimately, get to the highest level into the NFL playoffs.
And can you explain, as I narrated the scene, and I wanted to finish with what I've read about you, and it really stayed in my mind. Aim small, miss small. Can you explain from the mindset of a quarterback looking for a target? What is the metaphor here?
Well, what we start with, and obviously, if everybody who is a movie watcher knows where that line came from. It's not original to me. It's from the movie The Patriot. But anyway, people ask, how do you determine when a receiver is open? Well, when you're in high school, if the receiver is 10 yards away from the defender, he's open. In college, if he's 3 yards away from the defender, he's open. In the pros, if he's 2 feet away from the defender, he's open. So the focus gets narrower and narrower and narrower as you move up the ranks and move up to the highest skill levels of the game. So we've just decided that, if you're going to play at that level and you're going to have such small windows to throw into and small targets to throw into, then you've got to be capable of aiming at the smallest possible target you have. And if you aim at that small target, you can be off a foot and still be acceptable. But if you're aiming at a target that's 3 feet wide and you're off 3 feet, it's going to be an interception in the NFL level.
And is that mindset, well, I appreciate in The Patriot, I think it was Mel Gibson who was talking about the guns and they were firing at their enemies. But in the NFL, or you're throwing something, you're aiming for precision. Did you carry that mindset with you in your post-football life?
Yeah, certainly tried to every day try to, focus in on what's important, where we need to be in what we're doing, especially now in our financial businesses, and just make sure that our clients are prepared, just like we were prepared going into football games at the NFL level.
Indeed. In fact, I'd like to talk about that transition. I know you played in the NFL for 6 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
What happened either from the time you were thinking about changing careers? Did it happen abruptly, or was there a transition into what we're about to describe, what you do now?
Well, it's usually very abrupt. It's playing professional sports is I liken it to the fastest gun business. You're always going to run into a sharpshooter who has a faster draw than you do. Eventually, most people. There's the exception, guys who have long careers, but eventually, you're going to run into somebody who's just better than you, or you age out. And at the time I played, we weren't retiring on the finances that we made playing professional football back then. So, in the back of my mind, I always had another career path planned out. Football was just the first step in what was my journey in my professional life.
And then how did you, when you came to the end of your football career, what did you decide to transition to, given you spent so many years focused on a career on the field? What happened off the field?
Well, actually, I started transitioning before my career ended. In the off season, I got involved in real estate and the building business, and so I was involved as an investor and as a hands-on participant in the real estate business in central New Jersey, down in the Princeton area. So I kind of had a place to go when I retired from the NFL, and I was already doing something that got me started on my career track post NFL career.
And did you have to retrain, i.e., your education, professional development? What happened in the space between football and now the investment business?
Well, now the investment business, what I found in the building business was building was very akin to football because you put a plan together, you have blueprints, you have an architect that you work with, and then you go out and you try to execute, and build that plan. But what I really found out and what I found interesting is building is really a cash flow business, and it's cash management, and it's more that than it is the actual nuts and bolts and nails and hammers and things like that. And I found that fascinating, and that's what allowed me to start seeking out a career in the financial world where I could utilize some of that curiosity that I had for finance. I was an accounting major in college, so I was preparing for that when I was in college, but obviously didn't use it until post my NFL career.
How do you equate the skills that you learned on that field to the interpersonal skills necessary to get people to trust you with their investments?
Yeah, well, part of it was that as a quarterback, there's 10 other people on the field that you're working with. And as much as you are in a high profile position, you understand that your success is predicated on how well those people around you do. So I made sure, and I try to make sure that uh, not only do I rely on my own skill sets and my own talent, but I try to get people around me who are just as talented and have a strong skill sets, which allow me to, be that much more impressive and that much more supportive of our clients.
And now, actually, before I want to cover one other matter, and it's a big topic that relates to both football and to the managing of other people's money, and it's this big word called expectations. And I'd imagine when you come into professional football, you have yours and you have other people that heap those great expectations on you. How did you deal with the enormity of the expectation, the media, and the pressure to perform throughout the course of your professional career?
It's funny. In college, we had a saying, or our coach kind of coined a saying, that you need to be oblivious to the obvious.
I like that. That's a good one.
And
I've not heard that.
and it's and it was very obviously it made an impact on me
Right.
because I carry it to this day. And it just means that just because you're up by 4 touchdowns doesn't mean you do anything differently, and if you're down by 4 touchdowns, you don't do anything differently. You just go out there and you keep doing what you're trained to do, and ultimately if you have a long view, uh, things will come in your direction. Reversion to the mean, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, and I think we can apply that to sports, but certainly in finance as well. My background is in finance. I worked at very large financial institutions, and it was all about consistent accomplishment. You didn't have to be brilliant all the time, and just that steady stream up that mountain. So for you, Scott, I'd like to change the transition a bit, but let me take a station identification before we do. You're listening to A Climb to the Top, Stories of Transformation on Talk Radio 77 WABC. I'm Chuck Garcia, and my host this evening is Scott Brunner. Scott, in your transition then, whether it's real estate or what ultimately came, what happened in your evolution from the real estate business to something else that involved other kinds of investments, and what role did you play in that transition?
Well, it was actually like most things, it was an opportunity. It was given to me. I was building houses, building big, expensive houses in the Princeton area, and was building for people who were working on Wall Street. And a number of them had offered me positions, when they got to know me through the building process. And finally, I accepted the offer of one of them and moved, from the Princeton, digging in the dirt to taking the subway to work in Wall Street and reading financial statements and income statements.
Describe how you felt in that transformation from player to now the spotlight is on you in a different way.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with preparation and game planning is what it kind of came down to. And I tried to get to know my clients uh, as best I could so that I could understand what they liked, what they wanted, kind of what their mindset was, so that I wasn't just offering them information and ideas that they really had no interest in reviewing. I would cut through the chase. You know, my responsibility and my value added to them was to cut through the things that they didn't want and get directly to the things that they were looking for and that they were interested in. And they all had some sort of matrix or model that they built their investment decisions around. And I just tried to tap into that and make sure that I paid attention to it.
And tell us about now. What do you do? Do you do it for yourself? Do you do it for others? I'd love to hear where you are on the field today.
Yeah, I mean, now we're very similar, except, you know, what I was doing for large institutions when I was working at Wall Street, I'm doing for individuals now and for executives and professionals. Um, and you know, really, we have a very simple model. We look to protect people's assets, we look to grow their assets, and then we look to help them take distribution of those assets in a cost-effective way, i.e., tax-effective way.
But what we know is we look at the financial markets and we wonder, does it correlate to all of the bad news? What concerns or what do clients come to you and say, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing we have is just to calm everybody down and to reassure our clients that you know, when the market was down big in March, you know, we had a lot of people who came to us and wanted to sell. They thought the world was coming to an end, that there was no hope in sight, and we just tried to reassure them that, you know, this was a bad thing, but this too will pass. And all our clients pretty much have long-term views with their investments, so they're not investing for what's going to happen next month. They're investing for, you know, 15, 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, very long cycles, the long term, and you work to preserve and to make them feel good. I would say we have, Scott, many who listen in that are budding money managers. They are many finance majors at both the undergraduate and the graduate level. And many of them are trying to project, hey, if I manage somebody's money, what do I do to ensure that they would give them to me and they would trust me? I'd love your take as you think about you and your colleagues. What is it about your attributes that get people to say, yeah, I trust you with my money? What are the characteristics that would engender one to want to trust you?
You know, I think it's just being honest with people, and you know, just being truthful and painting a clear picture for them so that they understand that um, you're going to be upfront and you're going to be, as I said, and you're going to be honest with them, because in the end, that's really what trust is all about. It's about feeling comfortable that the person you're dealing with is going to do that in your best interest.
I state that, Scott, because sometimes in class, even at the graduate level, I teach public speaking, and I'll give an assignment, and I ask them to follow a character or a movie and describe to us what are the qualities and what do they pick, the Wolf of Wall Street, because it's been sensationalized, and they look at the role that Leonardo DiCaprio played and they said, oh my God, Wall Street is so glamorous. Yet, from your point of view, you're trying to make it unglamorous. Is that fair? Is that a fair statement?
Exactly. You know, that's most people who have success in this business are going to be, you know, are not glamorous.
Right.
It's more like being an offensive lineman. It's fighting in the trenches every day.
Yeah.
It's close contact fighting, but it's it's what you need to be successful. You need somebody blocking for you. So we try to be the blockers for our clients.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, because when you were the quarterback, you had people trying to tackle you, you had people trying to protect you, and yet the spotlight was on you because you were the guy with the ball, not just proverbially, but physically. And now when somebody gives you $1 million of their money, you're the guy with the ball. I am now looking to you, and you're going to have a statistic. It's called performance. And at the end of a quarter, that $1 million is now 1.1 million. That's your statistic. Is that what you bring to your clients, the objectivity and the performance that makes them feel that they are entrusted and it's a transparent process?
Yeah, I mean, I think what really we bring is we want to listen to our clients. And as I said earlier, what made me successful when I was on Wall Street was I listened to the clients and I cut through the stuff that wasn't important. We want to listen to our clients and know what their goals are and know what their aspirations are and try to help position them so that they can realize those goals and aspirations from a financial standpoint, that they'll have that financial support in the future. And whether it's planning for a wedding or whether it's buying a house or whether it's just getting ready for retirement, replacing their income on a monthly basis so they can take the trips they want to take and they can live the lifestyle they want to live. And that's what we try to put together and formulate in a way that's simple yet comprehensive.
Indeed, and I want to bring in one other aspect of this meeting, Scott, and it's an interesting one because while you are in the world of investment management, you haven't left football quite the way some people do. You may have put being on the field behind you, but you didn't put football on because you still work with people in the service of their success on the field. I would imagine that is both a passion and also part of a profession. Describe how you kept football into your life and how you help other quarterbacks in the service of their success.
Yeah, well, when I retired, I certainly had a passion for the game. And as you mentioned earlier, it was kind of the family business. So I had to make a decision if I was going to stay in the family business or if I was going to go and do something else. And as a child of a football coach, I lived in 13 houses by the time I graduated from high school. So I didn't want to put my kids through that. So I figured if I changed jobs, I would change my subway train and they would stay in the same house for their lives. And that's ultimately what happened.
You were a nomad, but they didn't have to be.
Right. But, and then I did some broadcasting, some TV work, and I just got tired of the traveling around and that type of thing. So I decided to just do something closer to home and do some training with some players. And I've had an opportunity to work with some NFL quarterbacks and, I've kind of developed a philosophy around training quarterbacks, that carries forward a little bit into what we do also in our financial planning. And, I tried to identify the pillars of what makes a great quarterback or what you need to do to be successful, because you don't have to be an NFL quarterback to be successful. I've worked with high school kids who have no chance of being an NFL quarterback because their mom and dad are 5'5" and 5'8", and they're not going to get to be NFL type caliber, but they can still be good in high school. And we use those three pillars, which we identify as athleticism, fundamentals, and IQ, football IQ specifically.
Let's take each of those because in the time that we were meeting on the show, we always ask, what do we want our listeners to think? What do we want them to feel? What do we want them to do? Let's just review that one more time because I think this is a great takeaway. And I think it's a metaphor that can apply to anyone, whether an engineer, football player, accountant, financial guy. Let's go back to those. What were those three pillars again? Number one.
Number one's athleticism. And this is also the evolution kind of a quarterback. So it's not only the qualities, but it's also, you think about the evolution. So if you look at a 10-year-old game, which person is the quarterback? It's the most athletic guy,
Okay, so that is, in a sense, that is their talent, their raw talent. So if they're born to be an engineer, whatever it is, it's that thing, that DNA that makes them particularly good. So the athleticism, it's a good one. What's number two?
So number two is just the fundamentals. So if we back up a little bit, athleticism is a pretty big term. So you have to identify it. So I've looked at all the great players and I said, what do they have in common? What makes them so special? They make the game look easy. And when I ask people, what do they think of when they think athleticism? They think, oh, he can jump high, he can run fast. These are all the qualities that they come out with. And I said, well, I can name just as many guys who can't jump high and run fast that are even more successful than the guys who do that. So we came down to balance and timing. So the great athletes have great balance and an uncanny sense of timing. whether it be just in their mechanics or the way that they approach the game. They make the right play at the right time. So if you look at that in a broad sense, that's where it all starts. And then as you move up the ladder, all of a sudden your athleticism really can't trump everything that happens on the field because other kids get better. When you're young, it's a big pool and you're the best in the big pool. Well, as the pool narrows, there's more athletic kids in the pool and you can't excel necessarily. So you have to understand the basic fundamentals of your position. And in our case, it's as a quarterback, it's ball handling and footwork.
Yeah, but I think that can apply to anyone. So we have athleticism, the DNA. But
Right.
sticking to the basics. Don't try to get too far ahead. Stick to the foundations. It's good advice for anybody. And it's a mindset because sometimes we get a little sloppy and lazy and all of a sudden we get into bad habits. So stick to the fundamentals. And third,
On fundamentals are ball handling. And the reason we call it ball handling is because the quickest way to lose your job as a quarterback, you give the ball away.
that's a good point.
And it's the same thing in finance. It's the same thing in business. It's the guys who make the big mistakes, the career-ending mistakes, if you will, that are the ones who are in trouble. So how do you avoid that, and go about your business? And then the fundamentals. So the fundamentals start with those things, and then the last one is the IQ, football IQ.
Right.
Which comes down to basically vision and decision. What do I see? What does it process? What's that multiple choice, test that I'm taking every time the ball is snapped? How do I process it? And then how do I make the correct decision to find the right answer in a timely fashion?
You're describing the way we climb mountains, Scott. It's very similar in that, because we have to look at our technical ability. We have to look at sticking to the basics. You can't get too fancy on mountaineering, you're dead. And you can't give anything away. You have to take that a little bit at a time. Well, Scott, that is excellent advice. Where does one find you? What's the name of your company? If they wanted to get in touch with you, how would that happen?
Well, you can go on Net Worth Management Group. It's networthgroup.com. You can go on our website, and all the information you need is right there. And we can help you. And if you have a budding young quarterback, you can still call me through networthgroup.com.
Indeed. There's two different reasons why you could rely on Scott to wake up every day in the service of your success. Whether it's you're going to be a quarterback or you want to preserve and grow your assets, you can always get in touch. Well, thank you, Scott, so much for coming on to the show. To our listeners, you have listened to a Climb to the Top Stories of Transformation on Talk Radio 77 WABC. I'm Chuck Garcia. You can always reach me on chuckgarcia.com. And our guest this evening was just a wonderful story from Scott Brunner, former NFL quarterback turned investment manager. Scott, thank you very much for your time and for lending your expertise to our listeners.
Thanks, Chuck. And hope everybody has a happy holiday season.
And to you too. Happy Thanksgiving.